Having completed the concept of seeing Allah, which we said comes under the general area of Tawheed al-Asma wa Sifat. We're dealing with some of the attributes of Allah. Being unseen, this is one of His attributes, unseen by human eyes. Being beyond His creation, that's another of His attributes. The next chapters that we will be looking at, from chapter 10 onwards, these now focus on Tawheed al-Ibadah, chapter 10 and chapter 11. These address issues related to Tawheed al-Ibadah and how shirk may enter into these areas. The first of the areas is the title of this chapter, chapter 10, Saint Worship, where people call on others besides Allah to either take their prayers to Allah for them or to actually do things for them when they are not present or they are not living. This becomes a part and parcel of what we refer to as saint worship, the worship of saints. Now, this is a part of Catholic belief. Catholics are known for saint worship. They have saints for each and every occasion, every human need. They have a special saint that you will call on to fulfill your wishes and your needs. And unfortunately, this methodology has entered amongst Muslims and has become a part and parcel of Muslim belief. Now, the root of it. Why would human beings want to believe in saints? Well, the reality is that it is a part of human nature to hold some people in awe, to look up to certain individuals, because Allah has not created people equal. He has favored some human beings over others, right? Whether it is males over females, right? Or it is some males over other males. Whether it is favoring them through knowledge, through wealth, through strength, whatever. Reality is that Allah has favored some human beings over others. So, when a person sets up a constitution saying that all human beings are created equal, this in fact is a falsity. It is a falsity, because human beings were not created equal. They were created responsible to Allah, and Allah has made that responsibility in accordance with the abilities that He has given them. We cannot even say that they're equally responsible, because some people, Allah gives certain things and He makes them more responsible than others. So it's not an equal responsibility. What we can say, it is a just and fair responsibility. That because Allah gave you more, He made you more responsible. Because He gave you less, He made you less responsible. So that's fair. Because if He made you as responsible as a person who was given more, that would be unfair. If He made the person who was given more, less responsible, equal to your responsibility who was being given less, that is again unfair. Right? So Allah is just in placing responsibility on each and every human being. So He has made women responsible, but He has excused them from prayer, at certain times, from fasting at certain times, from making hajj without a mahram. He's given them, he's excused them. But they have an appropriate responsibility before Allah, which is suitable for what Allah has given them. Similarly, males are given another set of responsibilities based on abilities which He has given them. And human beings, some He has favored with rizq, in provisions over others, as He said, clearly in the Quran, وَاللَّهُ فَضَّلَ بَعْضَكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ فِي الرِّزْقِ. Clearly, Allah has favored some of you over others in sustenance. And this is, and contains in it, a trial, and contains a means by which human beings may develop the higher spiritual quality of generosity. Right? We recognize and we admire generosity in people. We say such a person is a generous person. This is a noble characteristic. It's one of the noble characteristics of human beings, that a human being can attain. But how to attain that characteristic if people are not favored over others? If everybody is given an equal amount, then how can you be generous? There's no room for generosity. Generosity requires that some people be given more than others, so that they can give to those who had less. Also patience. Patience with regards to having less. How can you be patient, to develop that higher quality if everybody again is equal? We're all given the same amount. Patience requires when you see somebody with more, you don't let that drive you to want what they have or to try to take what they have or whatever, but you are satisfied with what Allah has given you. You are patient with it. Right? Without people having more, how are you going to develop that characteristic? So, all of it, these differences of favoring some over others, Allah has done it as a means to try to test people, to bring out their higher qualities. That's why we don't have a problem with the verse from Surah Al-Baqarah in which Allah said, يَا بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلِ اذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي أَنْعَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَأَنِّي فَضَّلْتُكُمْ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. Remember, O Israel, the blessing which I bestowed on you by favoring you over all of humankind. Allah said it. He favored the clan of Israel, who was Yaqub, over all of humankind. They were favored. Of course, this is what the Jews claim. But they claim that now as a means for being better. They claim because God has favored us, we are the children of God. God is our God, as you see in the writings in the Old Testament. The Lord God of Israel. Nobody else. It's only their God, special God only for them. And they turn that God into a special God that does things for them and doesn't do it for anybody else. So this approach, of course, is a distorted approach. The fact that Allah favored the tribe or the clan of Israel over the rest of nations means that they had a greater responsibility. They had a greater responsibility. And that favor, it was a favor from Allah, and Allah doesn't reward people for His favors, because that would be unfair. Because if Allah favored you with something and then rewarded you for it, and didn't favor you with something and didn't reward you for it, you have a claim before Allah on the Day of Judgment. You didn't favor me with it. Why not? It wasn't fair. So, the point is that when Allah favors somebody with something, then He demands of them what He doesn't demand of others. That's the bottom line. So you can't claim, oh Allah, you didn't favor His merit, but He didn't demand you of. So, you are excused. You don't have to fulfill what the person was favored with has to fulfill. So the children of Israel, when they were blessed with a large number of prophets, when you look at the other nations, 1 or 2 prophets are sent to them, but the Israeli clan was given a number of prophets, and so they boast about it. But in actual fact, when one looks at the history of their rejection of the prophets, execution of the prophets, they murdered prophets, the fact that many prophets were sent to them is not something to be proud of. It is to say that really they were so obstinate. They were so obstinate, so harsh, so, rejecting of what Allah was calling them to, that He had to send prophet after prophet after prophet to bring them. Other people He sent 1 or 2 and that was enough. But for them they had to send many. So on one hand it was a favor, but it also indicates and points out their obstinacy. Not something to be proud of. Right? But that's reality, and we have to accept it. And some of the prophets were favored over other prophets. As Allah stated, تِلْكَ الرُّسُلُ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Those are the prophets of whom we favored some over others. Allah favored some, He gave them abilities which He didn't give other prophets. But they are still one brotherhood. We don't take any prophet out of that brotherhood, and it is not for us to claim who is better than whom. Right? Now, as we said, the favor is a test from Allah. So it is not for us to boast about the favor, nor is it for us to desire the favor which Allah has given others, unless, as the Prophet ﷺ said, we desire to use it in the way, the righteous way that others have used it. So that is acceptable. But if it's just to have it for the sake of having it for oneself, this is not acceptable. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ had said, look to those below you and not to those above you. It is better for you that you do not deny Allah's blessings on you. So, this is the basic principle that we follow. If we are to look amongst human beings to determine who is in fact superior to others, that we may take them as examples, we may look up to them and desire to be like them, we have to follow the principles which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid down to determine who is better than whom among human beings. If it is left up to us to judge, then we will have our own criteria. When Allah chose for the followers of from the tribe of Israel, when He chose Talut to be the leader, they complained. Why Talut? When we have more money, we are more in a better position, they're questioning. But Allah knew best who should be their leader. Similarly, when people complained, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was given prophethood. You had others who were practicing this worship of Allah away from idols in the desert, like the Prophet ﷺ did. But when revelation came to the Prophet ﷺ, instead of them saying, that's what we were seeking, let us fall in line and follow the Prophet ﷺ, they rejected the Prophet ﷺ's prophethood on the basis of what? Well, if the Quraysh, the tribe of Banu Hashim, if they can have a prophet, their tribe is not better than our tribe. we should have a prophet too. Why should it come to them and not come to us? So they rejected the Prophet ﷺ because they couldn't accept that Allah had chosen the Quraysh and the tribe of Banu Hashim for the prophethood to be in. But Allah says, Allah knows best where He puts His prophethood. He's the one who knows best. It's not for us to say, it should have been here, it should have been there. That's why some people will, when they discuss about Islam, and they say, well, why wasn't the Prophet, sent to England, where English is now, the national language, you could say the international language of the world, right? This is the first language. Why wasn't the Prophet sent to England speaking English? Why Arabic? Right? This is their argument, because if it were Prophet was sent to England speaking English, it would reach a greater number of people. This is how it is perceived. However, Allah knew best. When He chose Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, an Arab, in the desert, in Arabia, where Arabic was confined to Arabia, Allah chose the right person. We believe Allah knows best. That message was taken from Arabia to the rest of the world. At an earlier period, had a prophet been raised in England at the same time, it would have gone nowhere. England was conquered and reconquered. The language itself, English, was still in the course of development. A language is really a German dialect, so it would have been better to be in German. And then, how many people speak German today? You've got all kinds of complications coming, right? So, the argument actually starts to fall apart when you look at what is the state of English at that time, etc. So, Allah knows best. And He lay in the Quran the basis of superiority amongst human beings. He said, إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ in Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 30. Indeed, the most noble among you is the one with the most taqwa, with the most consciousness of Allah. So He laid the foundation for superiority in piety, in consciousness of Allah. And reality is that consciousness of Allah is something which we cannot measure accurately. We can guess about from external deeds, but we cannot measure taqwa, because it is something in the heart. We cannot see into the hearts to weigh how much taqwa a person has. We judge by the external actions, and we make choices on that basis. Prophet ﷺ had said that a woman is married for 4 reasons: for her wealth, her nobility, her beauty, and her taqwa, and her piety. Choose the pious one and be successful. So Prophet ﷺ made that the basis for choosing a wife, the building block of the family. Not how beautiful she is. Of course, if she's beautiful and has taqwa, that's even better, and not how much money she has, the status of her family, but first and foremost her piety. If the other things come along with it, alhamdulillah. But again, also I should mention, so people may not misunderstand, that some people go overboard in the other direction, and they say, well, it's enough for her to be pious no matter how ugly she may look. Forget this thing, ugly, this is in the eyes of the beholder. You marry her, eventually, your heart is going to come around. No. Islam doesn't ask you to do that. Prophet ﷺ said, go and see the woman. Some people marry without even seeing their brides, until the marriage night. And I had good friends in Riyadh who that was their practice. Today, in fact, in those particular tribes, if a man, the marriage is arranged, proposed, if the man asked, can I see my wife first? It would be considered such an indignity that the parents would reject his proposal, and that would be the end of it. It's understood, you don't ask. You know? Yes. You know? So, this is their practice, right? But, is this according to the Sunnah? No. Can you do that? Yes. If you choose not to look, the Prophet ﷺ has advised you, but if you choose not to see first, then you have the right to go that route. But to make it a condition, this in fact becomes a form of bid'ah. Because it's going against the Sunnah. And what it means is that there will be times, there will be cases where, people will be unhappy because of not following the Sunnah in this matter. Right? But, so a person should be pleased with the person, and at the same time, the focus should be on piety. If you're pleased with the person, it's a pious person and you're pleased with them, that is enough for you to get married to them. Now, what we find is that people have designated other human beings as being superior because of certain acts that they may have done. Acts which people consider to be miraculous type acts. When, as I said before, you read the stories about the life of Abdul Qadir and others, you find it filled with miraculous acts. They did this, they did that, this happened, that happened, etc. And they use that as a criterion for a person's state of piety. However, this is not the Islamic way. This is not the Islamic way. And this opens the door for Satan's activities. Because the evil jinn are able to do things which may give the impression to people that these people have special powers. And you, as an external observer, cannot distinguish between what is in fact from Allah, because it is possible for Allah to allow or to create certain supernatural circumstances around a righteous person, a good person, etc. Just as the jinn, etc. may be able to do things around an evil person and that are similar, that will give the impression to those observing from the outside that this person is a saintly person. So this is not the criteria that we use to determine who is righteous and who is not. That is a mistake, which leads many, many people astray. The person who is considered to be close to Allah, who is given this special status, is usually referred to according to the Arabic term wali. Wali has been translated in English commonly as saint. Plural is awliya. Right? So, wali, this term, has been used to designate the saints. But if we go and look at the meaning of wali and awliya, we see it has a variety of meanings in Arabic. And it means just really a close friend. It could be a close friend of Allah, or it could even be the close friend of Satan. You find verses where Allah refers to wali as being, the wali of shaitan, of Satan. on pages 176, 177, variety of these references are made, referring to both the righteous as well as the unrighteous. But Allah has designated for us the criteria for defining a person as being a wali, meaning the wali of Allah, waliullah, right? How does one define them? Allah mentions in Surah Al-Anfal, إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاؤُهُ إِلَّا الْمُتَّقُونَ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Indeed, Allah's awliya, or Allah's close friends, are only those with taqwa, those who fear Him, who have a consciousness of Him. But most people don't realize it. Most people don't realize it. They think it has to do with the miracles that He has done. Also in Surah Yunus, we find Allah saying there, أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. Behold, certainly no fear or grief will overcome the awliya of Allah, those who believe and have taqwa. So here, in both of these verses, taqwa is the condition, and of course, what precedes that condition is belief. Because a person cannot have fear of Allah without correct belief in Allah. So these are the two conditions: correct belief in Allah and a consciousness of Him. Now, that is something, as I said earlier, which cannot be measured by us. Only Allah knows what is in the hearts. Even the external actions, though they may appear to be very righteous, this is not the basis for us to claim for them this special status. That is why even referring to somebody as a shaheed, who Allah or His Messenger have not referred, is incorrect. Referring to somebody as shaheed, though it is popular, especially Sayyid Qutb, Hassan al-Banna, people refer to them as shaheed because Hassan al-Banna was assassinated. Sayyid Qutb was, hung for their beliefs, for their struggles for the religion. We say that, they strove. We ask Allah that He may accept them as being shuhada, as being martyrs. But we don't have the authority to say that they were martyrs because we don't know ultimately what was in their hearts. And we have a narration from Umar ibn al-Khattab in which he said, on the day of the Battle of Khaybar, one of the last battles that the Prophet ﷺ was involved in, some of the Prophet ﷺ's companions came and said, so-and-so is a martyr and so-and-so is a martyr. When they came to a man about whom they declared so-and-so is a martyr, Allah's Messenger declared, by no means, he's not. They were saying so-and-so is a martyr, the Prophet ﷺ was silent, which meant they were. Because the Prophet's silence, when any statement is made before him, is his approval. So he was silent as they were listing people who had died in the battle. But when they came to one person who died like everybody else in the battle, he said, by no means, he was not. He said, I have seen him in hell in a cloak which he took from the spoils dishonestly. Allah showed him, when He showed him the visions of paradise and hell in the ascension, he had seen him in hell in a cloak, wearing a cloak which he had taken from the spoils. So the Prophet ﷺ sent his Umar ibn al-Khattab, he said, and announced to the people 3 times that only the believers will enter paradise. Only the true believers will enter paradise. So from that, we know that we don't have the ability to judge a person's taqwa and his iman from his external actions. But instead we leave that to Allah. What we'll do here, we have to we'll be going on further into the concept of the wali among the mystics. And this topic is an important topic because of the widespread practice of saint worship and how it has developed in the Muslim world. This is why we're looking at it in some depth. But for now, we will stop here.